So what I'm going to try and do today is guide you through a lengthy PowerPoint presentation, which will focus on what we have been doing in the framework of LECTIO and our newly established Magister Dixit community for the past 10 years or so, and then also where we are headed in the future. So that brings me to this slide. So we're going to walk through 4 steps. So how it started, and then how the community grew, where we are now, what our most important results and challenges are, and then what the future will bring. So it started as a joint venture between researchers and GLAM institutions, so galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, but mainly libraries in our case, and also archives. And it all started with an exhibition on teaching at the university. Ex cathedra it was called. So that was the first very preliminary name of Magister Dixit, and that led to a catalog as well. And you can still visit the online exposition on the website of the KU Leuven libraries, the very first of those GLAM partners, which I mentioned. And the idea was to digitize all these old books we have, and with student notes, reflecting student notes, but also having lots and lots of visual materials, lots of images, to the point to which I will return as well. And this first step, ex cathedra, led to LECTIO, which is now recognized as an official KU Leuven Institute, and one of the spearheads of this institute is researching the history of teaching at the old University of Leuven, which is the oldest of the Low Countries. They have been collaborating with the KU Leuven libraries, LECTIO, but also with UC Louvain, Louvain, so across the language border in Wallonia, and also the Royal Library in Brussels, the KBR. And there are more and more institutional partners getting involved as well. And then the first crucial funding came from the INBEV Latour fund. And in the future, so we have lots of digitizations thus far, but we will we continue to buy new student notebooks, try to find new partners. So there is an enduring relationship with the Bibliothèque Nationale de Luxembourg, and there are also some ad hoc collaborations. And today we see that the 8 collections are gathered into one virtual portal, which is a neat way to supersede these often arbitrary divisions between institutions and the collections they hold. So thus far we have more than 550 manuscripts digitized, which you can search through this portal you can see here, and you can limit your search by using all kinds of different metadata information. And there's also been an evolution. So at first, when we started, or the library started digitizing all these manuscripts, these notebooks, they started with very basic material, and they have grown and professionalized a lot, I must say, as you can gather from the pictures of the equipment that you can see appear on the slide now. And we've been trying to build a platform that will be a robust foundation for future research. As you can see, the numbers are quite impressive. We have more than 200,000 images as master copies in very high resolutions, and lots of derivative files, a lot of metadata, as I already mentioned, and we adopt the IIIF standards in order to ensure that the materials correspond to an international framework, this international framework for the dissemination of high resolution data. And this is an example of how one notebook looks like in the portal. And there's also a sister collection called Louvain, where you can find all the books of the old academic collection, or at least the digitizations there. And it's a similar procedure with the metadata. You can limit your search for handbooks, textbooks, and scientific works by professors or of Leuven University, or people who are otherwise related to Leuven University. So that's the very beginning. So let's move on to how the Magister Dixit community grew. And then there have been 4 major waves of interdisciplinary projects, as you can see. At first, it started with a focus on the Faculty of Arts, and especially how logic, dialectic was taught there, and also natural philosophy. And that's where I will start as well. So we have the pioneering work of these 2 scholars. So we have Serena Massolini, who worked on Petrus de Rivo, and Christoph Goedens, who worked on logic dialectic teaching in the 15th and 16th centuries, showing, among other things, that how valuable student notes can be for the study of intellectual history, as he found in student notes that very innovative, highly original logic ideas were developed at the university. And they also have been building and trying to formalize more their data in databases as well. So Christoph Goedens, for instance, had built for himself a database for personal research, but this is now being turned into something that can be shared with others. And his collaborator, or is somebody with whom he has been working, Professor Laurens de May, is developing Leonardi as a database of Aristotelian diagrams used at the University of Leuven and elsewhere. And then we move on to philosophy, where we have different scholars working on especially the later period than the first 2 scholars we mentioned. So we have Cartesianism, which is really at the core of the research of Davide Cellamare, Mattia Mantovani, and Steven Koezemans, who has been shifting to physics and mechanics lately in his postdoctoral research. And this group of scholars has been investigating how Cartesianism infiltrated in Leuven University. And then we come to the 3rd wave. So we had the 1st and 2nd wave in tandem, more or less. And then the 3rd wave is one which I have been surfing myself for the past year. So it's the Ad Fontes project, which focuses on teaching of Latin, Greek, and Hebrew at the 3-language college, Collegium Trilingue, as it was designed by Desiderius Erasmus and funded by Jerome of Buslaren. This, like Magister Dixit, started with an exhibition, Erasmus' Dream, commemorating the quincentenary of the Collegium Trilingue, and this exhibition has led to a Karl Leuven project, Ad Fontes in the Classroom, which is almost finished, but we already have 2 branching out to PhD fellowships with the FWO. And when we started out, we only had 1 body of student notes from the Trilingue, from Odyssey course, but at the moment we have 13 bodies of student notes, so we have discovered quite a lot of new student notes, and probably even more. So this is a pessimistic count of the bodies of student notes that we have. This is the team. So we have 4 supervisors, advisors, and then 2 PhD fellows and a postdoc, and several student assistants working on our database. So the main product of this project has been Dalit, the database of the Leuven Trilingue, which serves as a portal to this trilingual college, especially in its heydays in the 16th century. And we have been developing a digital editing method for these highly multilingual sources, which contain Latin, Greek, Hebrew, obviously, but also vernacular sources. And this we have input this in a relational database using FileMaker, where we have transcribed the notes and translated and also created other metadata related to these notes. And you can consult this on the website dalit.be already in a very beta version, but yeah, check it out. So you can hover over the words, and then you can get the annotated word here, and with the transcription of the annotation, translation, and so on. And we're also developing a search interface. In the future, we hope to integrate information on professors, students, or on persons, so prosopographical side of the database we hope to develop, and also this famous image here, which Maximilian already showed earlier. We also hope to list all courses that we know took place at the Trilingve during its heyday in the 16th century. Then we arrive at a very big ad aulam project. So it's the final wave of interdisciplinary projects, where we move from the Faculty of Arts, the study of languages, to the higher faculty, so to the teaching of law and theology. So this is the team of PIs, an impressive team of EIs, some of whom are present in the audience here today, and they have 5 doctoral students working on various aspects of the teaching and studying of law and theology at the old University of Leuven. So we have Dieter Kammarts working on printed textbooks, and especially the context and the networks around that. Raf van Rooy works on theology and the teaching of Michael Baius and Jacobus Jansonius. Shiri Roelofs works on Jesuit teaching, by among others Robertus Bellarminus and Leonardus Lessius. Ana Luisa Silva focuses on canon law with Petrus Peccius and Andreas Valensis. And then finally, Pedro da Silva Santos takes into account civil law and focuses on Petrus Gudalinus and Antonius Peresius. And they have been developing book historical databases, which are very rich, which you can access all or almost all. I'm not sure. This is something where I will need help from the audience, because some of the people working on the Ad Alum project are present. So they are working on Manuale Lovaniense, which is a database of the printed textbook as it was produced in Leuven. Impressai gives you data and metadata about the women printers at the universities of Leuven, but also of Douai in French Flanders. And then we also have a part of this database is devoted to the book production in Douai and Kamerijk, Cambrai. And you can all access these databases by through the portal Audis, but for the details I will have to refer you to my colleagues. So that's the past. Now we're turning to the present. So where are we now? What are the main results and challenges? So we've been trying to offer a new perspective on university life in the early modern period, in early modern Leuven, and especially on what happened in the classroom and in and around the classroom. So we're trying to offer an entire encompassing history of the old university from its foundation until the French came here and closed everything down in 1797. We're also focusing on methodological aspects to study notebooks. As has been mentioned, we're working on a manual for early modern student notes research, which is still in its embryonic phase, but we have good hopes that it will be out, perhaps not next year, but at least the year after that. And yeah, we have secured the collaboration of many international specialists, including Maximilian, so that's great. And we have been focusing on different aspects of the history of education. So how students have been taking their notes, how they have been making use of visual techniques, of visualization to process pieces of knowledge, pieces of information. And one aspect which Maximilian has also already stressed in his paper is intellectual history, so student notes, and how they can help us write intellectual history. So how experiments were used in the classroom, for instance, so didactic aspects, how certain councils, church councils were received in the classroom, so theological matters. We can also find traces of intellectual disputes in these student notes, for instance, regarding philosophical problems like the mind-body relation, and also legal for legal history, for the study of the law. These student notes have much to offer, and also how they read ancient authors at the Trilling, for instance. And we have been covering a lot, but there's still more to cover. So we're thinking about the future. What can we cover in the future? And there's one major blind spot, namely the teaching of medicine and how humanism influenced medicine in Leuven. As we see that Greek was increasingly taught at medicine faculties in the 16th century and later on. So there was a tremendous humanist boost there, but we still don't have a good we don't have really a good idea about what happened there, but we're hoping to expand our Magister Dixit vision to include also this higher faculty. Major results have been that we have been trying to fine-tune a methodology for transcribing, but also analyzing our handwritten sources by using Transcribus and other software. We've been trying to promote a grassroots, a student's perspective on the transmission of knowledge and their agency in co-creating this knowledge in the context of university. A very important point is that something which I've already mentioned, is that student notebooks can be the vector of new ideas if you approach your source from an intellectual history point of view. And of course, for a history of education, these documents are particularly useful. That's very obvious, and it also lends an insight into how students dealt with the knowledge, the newly acquired knowledge, and how this led to innovations in ideas and other respects. And we also want to shatter the misguided idea that there is one uniform Louvain University that was a Catholic bastion, but we want to nuance this picture by showing the different intellectual tendencies and trends at this institute and over its long history of almost 4 centuries. And the challenges that we face are the following, and we are hoping to counter these in the future. So the work that we have been doing has been very fragmented, both institutionally and with respect to the disciplines that we are focusing on or approaching the student notebooks from. We're hoping to expand our perspectives from intellectual history, pedagogical history, also to theological, religious history. So how did interactions with religious institutions, for instance, Jesuit colleges, occur? What is the relation between the transfer of knowledge and the history of media? How can we gather into one encompassing story different types of sources, such as manuscripts, disputations, dissertations, printed works that bear annotations or not? And another aspect that should be put more on the forefront is the visual aspect, which is something that for instance, Dr. Gwendolyn de Meulenaar has already been working on with the Magister Dixit database. And then the final part, so where do we go from here with all these results and challenges that we have seen? How do we go beyond merely digitizing our sources and beyond the institutional and disciplinary fragmentation? So we want to put AI to work. So let AI do the work for us. So we have people training new handwritten text recognition models through Transcribus, for instance. And especially more broadly, we were hoping to develop a common research infrastructure, which we have called Studium.ai, which would host 8 teams from across 4 different faculties at our university in Leuven. Some of the things we want to have AI do for us is, for instance, conduct a large-scale social network analysis. So this graph evokes that, as well as this, so that you could map out all different kinds of relations between people, so publishers, professors, students, theologians, and so on and so on. It's very we have a very wide scope in this regard, and we also want to make sure that we work with linked open data, meaning that we are going to try to link this common research infrastructure not only within our university but also beyond, linking it to international initiatives. That's the main idea. And I'm going to round off with an invitation. So in 2023, we have lots of events going on at KU Leuven. So there will be a workshop on the history of logic, so where it all started actually for our researchers. But most importantly, in December 2023, there will be an international LECTIO conference, Innovationes Louvanienses, Global Crossroads of Classic, Medieval and Early Modern Knowledge Transfer. So mark the date in your calendars and be welcome to attend this conference, or visit our online exhibitions. We have a variegated collection of exhibitions on the old university, on textbooks from Leuven and how they end up elsewhere or being used elsewhere, in Breda, for instance, on Erasmus, on the Trilingue, and also on Luther. So that's it. So I